Okay, this is the kind of run through of the analysis of blood alcohol content and beers. So this is supposed to be like at a college or something, and they had some people drink beers, and then they measured their blood alcohol content. So this is like 2 beers, 5 beers, 9 beers. It's a lot of beers. Yeah. Anyway, so it's just a short list, 16, a sample size of 16, not very much. My main goal on this is that you listen to the way that things are interpreted. There's a certain way you have to interpret the slope. There's a certain way you should interpret the y-intercept. There's a certain way you interpret r, and there's a certain way you interpret r squared, especially. All right, so listen to my, we'll do a quick analysis. There's little things in here, like when you do an analysis, there are things you should be doing. And hopefully you tried this on your own first, and then you're watching this video, and you're going to be hopefully you did it right the first time. But if you didn't, then hopefully you pick up those little things that I'm putting in that you didn't. Okay. So first thing I usually do is just graph it out. I want to see what it looks like. So I'm going to do my, now which one's the predictor? The explanatory variable is the beers, right? We're trying to predict what the blood alcohol content would be. I will just immediately throw on my regression line, and you're going to notice this goes fast, right? I'm noticing my R squared is not there, so I'm going to go into my settings and turn on my diagnostics right here. Click. Okay, and there's my R squared pops up. It looks pretty good fit, but it looks kind of curved at the end. So to be sure, which is what we're going to have to do in the future when we do inference, you're going to always have to show this residual plot anyway. It looks pretty evenly distributed. It's a little funky at the end, but it's these are above and some below, and one above. So it looks fairly linear, right? So I would say I can see from R squared, that my R value is going to be like, zero point 0.9 or something. So that's pretty strong. So I would say this has a positive, strong correlation, and it's linear. Um, it's not really fanning or anything. I don't really see any problems with it. So I think it's just fine the way it is. No fanning, and it's consistent for the most part. It would be this when I look at this would be good enough for inference. Like you could do inference on the slope, which we'll be doing in the future. So this is a pretty good residual plot. So that's the first thing I do. Let's get right into explaining the slope and the y-intercept. So there's a certain way you're supposed to say the slope. You're supposed to talk about the increase in x by ones. So you're supposed to say, as the number of beers increases by one, and you say it like that. So as the number of beers increases by one, on average, and you got to say average, on average, the blood alcohol content will increase by 0.0179, blah, 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 right? So you have to say for every one increase in the beers, the average increase in the blood alcohol content will be this. If you don't say the average, then you'll be wrong because it isn't always that way, right? Sometimes it goes up a little bit, sometimes it goes down a little bit. So you have to say on average. That's what your line is. It's like the center of your big three. Big three is center, shape, and spread. So this is your center. So it's an average, right? Just like an average of a data set, your line and your slope is the average, right, of a bivariate data. Okay, the y-intercept, this is from Algebra 1, no big deal here. So again, if the number of beers was 0, then the model is saying that the blood alcohol content would be a negative 0.0127. Now, this is the point where you have to make a decision whether that makes sense or not. I would say a negative value doesn't make any sense because we're talking about humans and blood alcohol content. So if you haven't had any beers, then the blood alcohol content should be 0 for a human. This is close to 0, but yeah, that would make sense. So you can kind of describe it a little bit like this is what the model is saying. And we use the word model a lot, right? So this is what the model is saying, but I would imagine or I would assume that the blood alcohol content should be zero if nobody had any beers, right? Okay, so you just have to describe it a little bit, like what makes sense in the context. All right, let's get to, well, we got R squared right in front of us too, so let's talk about that. Now remember before, if I wanted to, let me insert another data and statistics page. And I could put on the blood alcohol content just on this side alone. So this would be the variation I started with in blood alcohol content. And by making the association with beers, I have reduced the variation. And that's what this number is, right? So it's about 80%, right? So let's go with 80%. So the way you're supposed to say it is 80%, 80%, 80% of the variation in blood alcohol content, 80% of this variation has been uh, removed or sorry, let me say it again. I'm losing it there. Okay, so let me say it again. So 80% of the variation in blood alcohol content can be explained by the association with beers. So when you say it can be explained by, what you really mean is it's been removed. That variation has been removed. You really shouldn't say it's been removed though. You should just say can be explained by. It's an explanation. That's why they call this the explanatory variable, right? This is the explanatory variable because it's explaining what's going on with the blood alcohol content. So that's the wording we want to use as well. I'll say it one more time. 80% of the variation in blood alcohol content can be explained by the number of beers. Okay? That's it. That's really like a full analysis. Now, of course, we can do predictions and things. If I wanted to do all that, I could. I could do a regression. Notice it's right here. It's going into F1. So over like on a calculator page or even right here, you can just say F1 of, and if I want to predict 7 beers, right, then I can make a prediction. So this would be the blood alcohol content if you had 7 beers. And I'm just using the F1. So things like this, we just got to get savvy at, right? But what I already talked about is really all I wanted to do, like describing the data, saying the slope in a certain way, making sure you kind of logically think about the y-intercept, saying r squared in a certain way is really important. Of course, I can take the square root of that and get r, but we already know kind of what r is and what it does for us. Okay, that's it.